Well, I'm over here clicking the wrong thing.
Welcome to Lodge with 28 Days
Of
of
love,
Love with
love.
Kim and Dr. Drew.
Welcome, you
Welcome,
guys to 28 Days of Love.
everyone. Oh, my goodness.
I'm clicking the wrong thing, like wondering why are we showing up? Clicking the wrong thing.
Oh, my goodness. So
Thank you for logging in.
we're so glad you're here. So glad you're here.
For day 23.
Day 20. Oh, there was a
23.
band called Day 20. Oh, that was 26. All right, I had that
26.
wrong.
All right, well,
Thought I had a
it's
little
day
connection
23.
there.
Day 23.
It's day 23 with us.
We've been consistent and persistent for the 23 days. I'm saying persistent. We've had a couple snafus with some guests along the way. So when the guests aren't there, guess who you get?
You get Kim and Dr. Newt. But I'm not mad at that because there's always something for us to say. And I wanted us to talk a little bit more anyway. I really
that was me. I tried to push us not to be able to talk the whole month and have more guests. So,
but I really wanted to us to talk and to share some of the things, especially things in our book, things that we've experienced, along with hearing what our guests are saying and making those connections. I'm actually posting right now. So Newt, can you just tell them a little bit about how we started this whole thing, how God dropped it on our lap?
We just started. No, seriously, man. So we've had some ups and downs, and we shared last time we shared, our marriage wasn't always roses, it wasn't always, an easy road. I wasn't an easy person to live with. I didn't even know me, I was still growing up, but as Tom and Isha said last night, she saw something. And I think the same thing was in play here. She saw something, Kim saw something. And I think I was blessed like Tom to be able to have words to speak, to say. And then when she could hear me, she would pour into me. And so we had our issues. We had our issues. And our issues wound up in a separation. We separated for a year, in separate houses. So our cell phone bill stayed the same.
Yeah.
We continued to maintain the responsibilities that we had, but Kim would not talk to me about our relationship. That year was a time of healing for some issues that I needed to work through. And apparently I learned later some things that she needed to work through.
Yeah.
So she wouldn't even talk to me. I try to talk about the relationship and she wouldn't talk. I get mad, and upset. And that was an indicator that more time was needed. So she asked me to say how we got started. Well, you need to understand that anything that a person does is led to do. Any leader of a thing usually begins that thing out of some type of passion or disgust. I'm going to say anger, some kind of pain. Something happens to make them want to dedicate, whatever it takes from themselves to make that thing happen. Like a Martin Luther King or a Gandhi or a Mandela. There was, an X. Those people, they stood for something that they didn't like and didn't want other people to have to go through. The same thing kind of happened with us. So when Kim gambled and went with me to California, I got a job in California, and she came, dropped what she was doing, and came, and we reunited back together. We were able to communicate in a different place, different people. It just had us. We realized, how good the marriage was, in the relationship, and we didn't want anyone else to have to feel or walk through what we walked through. Yeah. So that's the long version.
But that's the good version, because of us going through all the stuff that we went through.
Right.
That's the good version. The good version is that why, because it's not just that out of nowhere, they just decide to talk about marriage or help people who are having difficult times in their marriage. No, it's because we experienced that. And I always have been a firm believer that when you've come through something, you have a responsibility to help those who are coming through it.
Right. So even as a math teacher or a science teacher, you know, once I taught a student a concept, and they didn't have to like be an expert at it. It was now, okay, go help your buddy.
Yeah.
Go help them next to you, you know. And in you helping them, it's going to solidify the example that you just got to write with me.
Right.
You know, so we never claimed and still don't claim to be experts in marriage. We know people that have 40 years, 35, 40, 42 years. And I mean, we have 23 together. Kim has what, 39, really?
I've been married all my life since I was 19 years old.
Between her two, I don't really remember how long I was married the first time. I just say 5 years. So I might have 28 years being married, but them 5 don't count. I don't know what I was doing, right? So like we're teenagers when it comes to marriage, right? but and we're not experts,
right?
You know, and there was times that I know, and you know, I kind of hesitate saying this because I don't want to sound. Well, I'm just going to say it. That there were folks who said, you know, just because you write a book doesn't mean you're all of a sudden you're an expert. You know, and we never said that. You know?
You did.
Yeah, I never said that at all. You know, we just wrote the book,
right?
You know, because we wanted to help, we wanted to share. We feel like that's our responsibility. I mean, that's kingdom. That's a kingdom principle. You know, it's reciprocity, and you continue.
And then even in the scripture, there's a story where Jesus healed someone, and pretty much then the person had to go back and tell everyone. Right. And then when Paul and Peter and them were saving people, hundreds and so many people, those people that day went and shared the work and told what good things had happened.
Right.
And so doesn't have to be a certain amount of time. No. You don't have to be a perfection, perfect. You're willing.
You just have to say yes.
You got to be willing. So
we talk about the 4 principles of purpose. Everybody has a purpose. That purpose is a solution. Means that you're going to meet some opposition, and in order to operate in that purpose, you just have to be willing to go.
Right.
That's it. You don't have to be perfect. You have to be just go. So that's kind of what it was. So hi, Auntie. Good to see you. Thank you for logging in. So
Mike we just Capo, I see you over here.
I don't see. I can't. So we're looking at 2 different logins.
Devices.
Right. So just that's kind of how we got started. So we called the ministry Marriage Simple as Pie. So this was maybe 2016, 15, 16, somewhere in there. 15. We and that's when Zoom kind of first came out. And I was using Zoom on my job because I teach remotely in the online division. And so we would send out Zooms and get someone to come on as a guest, and we would hold that Zoom piece and show it to people.
In San Diego. It started in San Diego. That was the beginning of our launching what it was that we believe God had given us. And we didn't call it launch. We didn't have launch till we moved to Arizona. It seemed like wherever we were, God just gave us something else.
So we just said marriage simple as pie, and pie means to provide, invest, and empower one another. So that was what we said. Marriage is simple. It's simple as pie.
It's easy to get married.
But that pie has ingredients.
That's the part.
And those ingredients are going to look different in your household than it is in my household, but it has some of the same principles, and that's the difficult part. So that's kind of where it all came from. I kind of rambled a little bit, but here's what I wanted to share with you. So we wrote a book. When did we write the book? I don't even remember when we wrote the book. We wrote it in California.
We wrote it in California. Then we didn't send it out.
Published it in 2020.
Yeah.
So the book, Baggage Claim, we called it, because that's what we think you have to do is claim your baggage. When we wrote it in California, I'm telling you this because you could do the same thing. Every Sunday, we would come home from church and we would sit down and we would write. What did we say? An hour?
Yep.
But it would end up being like an hour and a half, 2, because you would get in a flow of a thing. And we did that on Sundays. That was the only day of the week that we did.
Yep, we did it Sundays.
And we wrote, and then we would come together and read what we wrote. Now we had already set an outline, and we kind of knew our pattern and what our topic was. So we had all week to kind of think about it, and
Yeah.
write down little notes. And we came on Sunday and we spent that hour, and I think it was really ended up being like 2, because
Yep.
we would get into it. And then once we had a chapter, we sat down and we read that chapter to each other and kind of went back to the drawing board, cleaned it up, and we kept going until we finished.
Mhm.
It didn't take long at all, really.
No.
It didn't take long
We
at all.
were dedicated to it.
Right.
Because we just knew we had something to say.
Right.
And we called it Baggage Claim because Newt and I talk about all of
We didn't even have a title at first, did we?
No, I think we.
Oh, we did, yeah, because I
we
see
did.
the copies. I see the old copies. Okay.
Yeah, we were talking about all the bags that we brought into the relationship, and I guess the one thing it starts it off in the book, and we're going to read a little segment out then, but the one thing that starts it off is that Newt was picking me up from the airport.
Yeah, San Diego.
And so it was about bags because we were traveling, hi Kelly. We were traveling and we were carrying our luggage and the stuff that, not just the physical luggage, but luggage that we had on our heart, our soul.
Right.
We were loaded and there was just stuff that we just had to get rid of.
Right.
And after we had stayed, we raised our kids and we did all that. Now we're facing each other. So we're going to read that. I'll start with mine, and then Newt can. No, I think Newt, you should read yours first because yours is probably you're here. So we're going to read a part of chapter. I'm trying to think. This is chapter 7. Part of chapter 7.
Yeah. So there's and before I read this, let me just give a quick example. So I grew up in a household. My mom and dad were married all my life. They were married. I'm the youngest. So my oldest sister's 8 years older than me. So I think they were married a year before she was born. So they were married 9 years before I came into, the world. And they were married all my, until my dad died. You know, if he was alive, they still be married. But and they were, they were very goal oriented, hard charging, worked very hard to create a different type of life for my sisters and I than they had, because they both grew up very poor, and had hard knocks. They made sure that, that we were educated, exposed to a lot of things. But it was a very functional relationship, a household that I came from. Very functional household. I mean, there wasn't anything missing. Everything kind of had its place. There was a system for everything. There was dysfunctions, but that was part of the system. Right. So it was a functional household. But there wasn't a lot of relationship. Right. In the household that I grew up in. I mean, it just wasn't a lot of relationship. So one of the concepts we talk about that I'm going to read is functional household versus functional marriage relationship. So it reads like this: creating, puts my eyes on.
Put your glasses on.
Creating a functional household simply takes two individuals who are reliable and committed to making sure the bills are paid, comforts of the home are available, the children are fed and clothed, and a sense of morals, ethics, and values are upheld in the household. Now, the two people creating a functional household, they can love each other dearly. If they never deliberately feed and grow, but they never deliberately feed and grow that love, then it will eventually take a back seat to what's being fed the most: the household and the reputation of the family name. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't focus on creating a functional household. You should. However, if that's all you focus on, right, you will find yourself just as I did, standing in the middle of a field, feeling figuratively naked and exposed. And that's another part of the book. So you got to read that ahead of time, right? See, the things in your household, they're temporary. They're not permanent. On the other hand, when you balance your time and your energy and your resources towards investing in a functional marriage relationship, then you're building something permanent with someone that has willingly made a vow and a covenant with you, right, just because you are who you are. And that doesn't go away so easily.
So
I wish we were in the same room because I would want to say, so what do you think about that? Kind of what's going on in your mind when you hear that functional relationship versus that functional marriage? But
talk about it yourself.
so I mean, it again, like I said, to me, I grew up in a household that it was functional. It was a functional household. It very functional.
So ran like a machine.
It ran like a machine, but there were. And you knew how to act and when to act and what to say and when not to say, became very mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
And from the outside looking in, it looked like a great family and a great place to be. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't a great family
Mm-hmm.
in some respects, but there were some gaps and some holes when it came to relationship mm-hmm. and understanding what marriage is. So I have two sisters who have been married more than once and are not married. I'm the only one that's had any longevity as far as marriage is concerned. My mom and dad, they lived in separate bedrooms for my middle school days. Mm-hmm. When my middle sister moved out, my mom moved in her room. Yeah. And is still in that room. My dad's dead and gone. She don't even stay in the big master bedroom. Right. There's some things about that functional household versus a functional marriage relationship that I think you want to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
So think about your relationship. Think about your marriage.
Don't let it be mechanical.
Don't let it be mechanical. Even we learn, even as we grow, there's still things that because that's what I came up in. That's right. A baggage of mine.
Right.
So there's certain things I protect unconsciously. Yeah. I'm protecting them and guarding them and don't even know it. Mm-hmm. And I know Kim's on my team. Mm-hmm. I know she's not trying to hurt me or take from me. But because it's my baggage,
right?
It was what was instilled in me in my formative years. Want to get real technical, but a gentleman, Eric Erickson, he talks about stages of development. Mm-hmm. So from the time you're a little child, you're developed, and the things that you're developed in, they're not even your ideas. They're the environment that you're a part of. That's what your parents do or whoever's around you, what they say is right. Then you accept those things as right. And they begin to develop your psyche, your consciousness.
Right.
So you don't even know that's happening until you're like 12 or so and you start to be your own self, but you're being your own self based on the principles and the things that you were already kind of indoctrinated in, for your family. So that's a baggage of mine.
Right.
That functional relationship is a baggage of mine.
Mm-hmm. Well, some baggage you brought into the relationship.
And I brought it here, but Kim's not from that. That's not Kim.
Right.
So then there becomes a clash.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with that clash?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of stop right there.
Oh, that's fine.
It's kind of heavy.
So what Newton and I did with our book is, as he said, we wrote separately and then put it together, but we had topics or focuses. It wasn't really a topic, but a focus. And it was interesting that a lot of our writings were like spot on. It was crazy how connected they were. So they just fit together like a glove. And when we were getting ready to publish it, the one person who was publishing it for us was like, you guys want to write separate like that? And we were like, yes, absolutely. Because in the mind of the relationship, there needs to be clarity as to what one is thinking in regards to the other one, so that we then can come together. And so our focus was, we're going to write these things separately. And then when we get to the point of the end of the book is when we started writing together, because we understood. Because the things that I was writing, Newt didn't know I felt that way. The things he was writing, I didn't know he felt that way. So what we would do on Sunday after we wrote is we would come and read it to each other. So then we learned. Remember them days?
You're back, and she got mad at me.
Well, I think you got a little mad with me.
She was upset with me one chapter there.
Yeah, and it's true, because you're learning things. So we were still in a learning stage while we were writing the book. So the book came off, it was raw. It was very raw. So I'm going to read just a section of part of chapter 7 also. The section began with being called Kim's What's Now, and then it was called Blurry Mirror. But I'm not going to read from the beginning. I'm going to start in the middle of it. It says, the household we set up was far from perfect, but it was ours.
Yep.
And we loved every minute that we had to parent each of our kids and watch them grow. However, children aren't supposed to stay, but are meant to grow and go. And that's what they did. And one after the other, every 2 years, we packed them up, dropped them off at the college of their choice. And before we could prepare ourselves, we were empty nesters. It was weird being in the house without all of the laughter, the loud music, the movies, the neighborhood kids hanging in the backyards on our little basketball court. Reality kicked in quickly, waking up in the morning in a lifeless, quiet house looking at Newt and he at me. We suddenly realized that all we had was each other. And I remember when the kids were young, I was excited for the day that we would be alone. Wow. Yeah, that's funny. I look forward to the freedom to travel and spend time together, especially since we spent most of our time working, finishing college, raising children, and celebrating our accomplishments. But now the thing I had hoped for was staring me in the face, and I was empty. The truth is that I spent so much of my time being happily distracted by the little lives that I was responsible for. I spent very little time focusing on our marriage and what I needed. So when the time came to give all my attention to the marriage, I had very little hope in our future. I realized that I filled my emptiness with the void from Newt's absences due to his personal struggle with the needs of my children. So after years of working to make it to this point in my life, the house was empty. My void fillers, which were my kids, were gone. Now I had to face the person I loved, who also was the person whom my hope had depleted. So here we were in a tough situation, loving each other, but we weren't really relating. We were living in the house, but not really living in the covenant.
It was two separate things.
We were two separate things. We were heartbroken. We had offended each other.
Two separate ships in the water, going the same direction. But not.
The problem is we just didn't connect. And we didn't connect because, as I said, our kids were our void fillers. And it was happy, like having them, but then they're gone. And if you have children, you'll see, if you don't work on this relationship now, I mean, literally work on the relationship right now while those kids are small and in that house, you will find yourself as we did. Church and all. It don't matter if you go to church or not.
Yeah, and I'll take it a step further for you because and I don't want to, hopefully I don't step out of line with any kids. The kids are all adults now, so I like to respect them when we talk online. But my dependency on at least one of the children, I think today there's an inkling of resentment, if you will, because I blurred the lines between our relationship, of father and son. So that's one of the things that, or father and child, that's one of the things that you want to consider. This is, she was my covenant partner. Your children aren't your covenant partners. You're not in covenant with them. You have a position in their life. You have a purpose and a position. You've been entrusted by God to move them along the path of their purpose, to provide for them. In advance, to see in advance for them, so they can, move along, their purpose in their way. And that's your position,
right?
And that position changes as they grow. Right. And when they're gone, that's not your position.
That's not your position.
So you don't want to get left looking at the covenant,
right?
And there's nothing there. It's empty.
You put all that attention, trust, love, and all that you were supposed to put in your relationship in those kids. And I'm not saying you don't take care of
all
kids,
your money, all your time,
but that's
all your effort. You done going to school and fuss and argue. You done stepped to somebody else's kid and somebody else's mom. You made them the center of everything.
Yeah.
Changing your character, your inconveniencing your stuff, your time, and they gone now.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to relate to your wife.
Yep.
And to your husband.
And so that's what happened.
Yeah. So you have a functional household.
if that's what's happening in your marriage, and we're on here to tell you that if that's what's happening, if anything that we shared in our book, that portion that we read reflects, or in this conversation is reminding you of things that are happening in your marriage, that it's all about the kids and it's all about what needs to be done for them. I've heard people say, when you have kids, you don't have a life. That's a lie. That's a lie from the pit. Yes, that is a lie. Do not put all of your time and energy in the child who's supposed to grow up. The purpose of the child is the fact that the child will grow and the child has to go. And it's supposed to establish their own household. You, on the other hand, have your household with your spouse, whether you're a man and you're hearing me and you have a wife, or if you're a wife and you're listening and you have a husband, you have a responsibility to build a relationship with your husband. And why are we telling you that? Because we did it and don't want to see you go through it.
Right. So, I mean, it's just a couple of tidbits we just kind of wanted to share with you. So if you look through the book, there's some other things I think that may be helpful for you. We created some tools in there. One called How. So I don't know if you want to tell them.
Oh, go ahead. You started it.
So how? So we ask people throughout the month, what's your go-to strategy when you have some waves in your marriage, right?
Right.
So we haven't really shared any go-to strategies, right? But for me, if you were to ask me that question, I would say, how is my go-to strategy? And it doesn't always happen fluently with me. Because if I get in defense mode, then I'm in defense mode before I know it. And I'm moving faster than I want to move. And my soul man gets in the way of everything. My pride and my defense, fight, flight mechanisms, all those things. So as I'm able to grab myself, how is my go-to strategy? Meaning this. How means honest, open, and willing. So at some point, I gotta stop in the middle of that transaction, whatever's going on, and get honest with what's really going on inside me. Why am I really upset? Is this reaction mature?
Right.
Immature? Why am I reacting or responding this way?
Yeah.
What really triggered me in this whole event? So I got to get honest with that stuff. And I got to get honest while conversation is happening, unless we just go in separate rooms or something. While conversation is happening, or Kim's standing right there, I gotta figure out how to do that. And then I gotta be open to what Kim is saying, or what may be a need that Kim has expressed, or open to doing something a little differently than I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Which might mean letting go of my stance, or just, apologizing and trying to reset the event. I got to get open to that. And then the next part of how is willing. I have to be willing now to actually do what I'm open to, if that makes sense. So I have to now actually do it and walk it out, and so that's kind of I think my go-to strategy. And so so I can kind of say it globally like that, because I think it's something you can apply to a lot of different places and a lot of different things. But for us, that's kind of what I go through, the little cycle that I go through.
And mine, although I do use the honest, open, and willing method, I really do the real,
the 4 R's.
The 4 R's, because I believe in having a real conversation. I believe in that. I believe in having that real conversation. I believe in letting it be raw as it has to be. And it is difficult. It's a rough conversation, but I believe in having it. And I think once you have that real rough conversation, then at least you heard how he feels and he heard how you feel. But to pretend that it's all good, oh, no worries. And then you go in another room and you start thinking about it. Yeah, see that, then you lied. So it's best for me. My go-to thing is, let's just talk about it. Just put it all on the table. How do you feel? What are you thinking? Just keep it real. Keep it real. After the real, the real and the rough, I feel like they kind of go together. We get real, the conversation is rough, and then the recovery part can happen in the relationship, because now that I've heard what he's had to say, I realize that we are on the same team. We're not trying to hurt each other. He has feelings and he's human. I have feelings and I'm human. But now we need to come together and figure out, how are we going to recover this thing? What agreements are we going to make? What things am I going to allow and drop? It's not that important. We have to come to some kind of agreement. And that's something you have to do. And then what you find from that is you get results, and those results, they're not going to be perfect, but they're going to work for you because you work through it. Then what happens is, later on, those conversations aren't as rough when you have that same type of thing come up, because you already taught yourself to talk through it and how to go through it. So I love me. I'm a communicator. I'm like, let's talk about it. Newt might not be as communicative as I am, but I'm like, nope, I want to talk. And I'm not really one to just not talk about it. He might need a few minutes. I'll give him a few minutes, but we still are going to have to talk at some point in time.
And I realize that, but I have to process that. That's why I say the how is my go-to. So you got, and here's baggage. I'm the youngest of my siblings.
Spoiled.
Yes. My middle sister's 6 years older than me. My older sister's 8 years older than me. My dad was 40 when I was born. So there's all kinds of gaps. I'm spoiled. I had the benefit of stuff that my sisters didn't have. My parents were tired, so there was a lot of things that go along, a lot of factors, and I got to be honest and real with those factors. And they show up now as a grown man. I'm 57, show up now, in just last week, this week, we had an episode. We had a spirited conversation.
I said an episode. Spirited.
And I felt myself. I said something and walked out the room and came downstairs. By the time I got halfway down the stairs, I felt stupid. Like little baby, throwing a temper tantrum. So I got to do the how part first to get into the willing phase, the open phase, and then I know the conversation has to happen. So what Kim just said is chapter 10 of our book. So if you haven't grabbed the book, it's on Amazon. It's chapter 10. It's real rough recovery and results. So those are some things. I know we're way over.
Laughing at you.
We're way over our time.
That would have been Michaela sniffing it, throwing the temper tantrum. We all throw them there.
Yeah, but that's the reality. So I mean, we just like I said, we're not experts. And we're human, and we got all kinds of baggage. And you're always unpacking.
Exactly.
And with men, somebody James talked about the business box.
Business box.
Right? With men, we have a business and life box. We take everything that's uncomfortable for us, whether it's uncomfortable for us as human beings or uncomfortable for us as what society taught us we're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And we put it in a box. And we take that box, I think we said in the book, and we put that box in another box.
Yeah, men do.
And in another box. And then we find a closet or somewhere, and we move all the stuff out the way, and we put it behind that stuff, and then put all the stuff back so you can't tell the boxes are back there.
Right.
And that's how we live our lives. And then when something happens, something said, because we haven't practiced, real rough recovering results, the 4 R's of communication, boom, we explode. We don't know how to handle it. So now you got a conflict.
Oh. So you're saying because men don't really communicate.
And we've packed it away. We've never taken the time to unpack our baggage and be very real about, look, this is my baggage. It doesn't sound good or feel good, but this is if I'm not paying attention, this is what I'm going to go back to.
Now, I'd like to say that I don't think all men do that, because there are some men who are communicators. But we would say that there's a larger percentage of men who do not like to really,
because that's what society has taught us, especially in my generation. That's what society's taught us.
That's a foundational lie. And what's it? Psalms, is it 11:3, where it talks about the foundations be destroyed and foundations. What's it? The scripture?
I think it's 120 something.
No, I don't think it.
If the foundation be destroyed, how do the righteous?
No, that's Psalms. It's either 11:3 or something. That's close.
I'm not going to guess.
But I know it's that because it's open in my Bible, in my office. But nonetheless, the reason why I'm saying something is a lot of time it's a foundational lie or foundation that something you were founded on as a child, something you learned as a child, and that thing is incorrect. And so even now, as we are getting older, we have to look for those things that are foundational in our life. Those are things that are lies, those things that are not truths, those things that we believe, those things that we stood on that are untrue. And we have to, just like that what's that game, remember that pixie stick game where you pull out? You got to start removing those things, that were on the marbles. Remember that? That's an old game, y'all. Wow. You have to start removing those foundational lies that you were taught, that you saw, that you thought, that you felt, that you believed as a child. And you have to replace them with the truth of God's word. Right. Because if not.
And I'll tell you this, what Kim is saying is very true, because we don't even know, many of them, we don't even know their lies. We don't even know they're driving us. Their lies. And we are literally, I'm not going to use the word judging because I'm not sure if it's judging, but we're creating an opinion of our spouse or someone else based off those untruths. And we're putting ourselves in the correct position, not realizing that our correctness is already cracked. Right? So now we're looking at this person. Wow. We're perceiving them from a cracked position.
Right.
And we're making this, the only word I keep coming up with is judgment, but
it is a judgment.
We're making this judgment, this choice, this presupposition about this person, and our foundation is incorrect because it's based on a lie, an untruth, a half truth, some baggage, something that was never actually, I'm going to say, correct or functional.
Right.
So we have to be real careful. We got to be real careful. We have to do the time to unpack our bags. Yeah, we have to do. I'm resisting the urge to say a few things, but we have to unpack our bags because, if not, you're going to have a real hard time in your relationships because you're always going to hold somebody to something that is based on a cracked foundation and is not even logical, doesn't even make sense in that person's mind. That person may have some issues, but you're not able to help them, talk them, or whatever through those issues because you're coming at them from that cracked foundation, and that's what they see. So you receive things how you perceive things. So if I perceive that crackness, I can only receive it as crackness, and how I receive a thing that determines what I'm able to produce. If that makes sense. We kind of rambling now. We're at 41 minutes.
But anyway, just to end it, the reason for us sharing today was for those of you who are married and you are trying to figure out what direction and where we at. And I'm not sure what to say here. And the kids are going or things aren't going as they should do. We're together. We're going to church together. We're spending time together. We're doing this together. But the realness is not there. Well, now is the time to address it while you have an opportunity. Don't wait till it gets so bad that you can't even talk. Take care of it now.
And you have to address it. You can't address it by pretending that yesterday didn't happen.
Right.
I'm not talking about things between you and the person yesterday. Yeah. I'm talking about things between you and
yourself
yesterday. And how are those things driving the way that you interact, react, and respond to each other in every event. It's not even just each other. It's every event in your life.
Anyone.
Yeah, but this is your covenant. So this is the best place to start.
Yeah.
It's the safest place because part of covenant means safe, a safe nook. It's a comforting and safe place. So this is where I start. And as I'm able to build covenant with my wife and become a better husband, I'm a better man. I'm better at everything else that I do. So you got to go back to go forward.
go back to address those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Claim the bags.
And deal with them. Then you don't have to keep them now.
Mhm.
Say you
Right.
did those things.
Yes.
Say you do those things. Get rid of them.
That's why we named it baggage claim. We didn't just say unpack it. Because you can unpack a thing and not claim it. They ain't my drawers.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
You can unpack a thing and not claim it. And you pulled it out your own suitcase and they watched you. You cannot claim it. I mean, you can do that. You can deny it. But this is a process of accountability and ownership of whoa, this is what's defining me. I got to claim this baggage and then work forward with what to do with it.
So one way to do that, I'm just going to say this real quick.
Oh, I forgot you had that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I had made this game a while ago, and we put it in our marriage conference, and it says, think of 2 things about yourself that people are consistently mentioning that they notice about you. Now, I'm not saying people say something to you, you have to believe it. But I'm saying if you're hearing something consistently about you, that you're selfish or you're hateful or that you're rude or that you're mean or you're whatever, and you're constantly hearing that from people, from your spouse, people you trust, then just consider, okay, what are some things that I am, how am I responding? What is going on in my character? I need to deal with that. So just consider that can be something that you do to kind of just check yourself, and then compare it with the Word of God, with the fruit of the Spirit, how you should behave. And if you're not, then you know that some of those things that people see about you are true, and you need to address it right away. All right,
that might be in the book. Is that in the book?
No, it's not.
Okay,
guys, thank you so much for coming on and spending this time with us. Share it with somebody who you know is having some difficulties in their relationship and they're just trying to figure out what to do. Let them know they're not alone. We too had been there, and we are growing still every day. It's a daily walk.
Yes, daily walk.
Get to know each other. All right. Love you guys. And we will see you next week for the final week. And oh my goodness, we've got some great people coming on next week. We've got the Browns. We got I always say the name wrong. Capose coming on, and it's just going to be amazing. And we'll see you then on 28 Days of Love. Bye, guys. Have a good evening and a great weekend.
Don't forget to put up tomorrow. What's tomorrow?
Oh, date night. Yeah, I forgot date night.
So
okay.
Look for that on our 28 Days of Love.
All right. Bye, guys.